Hey everybody, we are joined by Milt Hendrickson, the Packers Director, Football Operations. Thanks for being here, Milt. To the layman, could you give us a job description?
Sure. I think my job description is one that I like to say, first and foremost, I'm a scout, and that's my background. From that, though, there's a lot of day-to-day stuff that I'm involved in our personnel department, just from the day-to-day practices, the meetings that we have, working through the wire, working with Brian on a variety of different topics, working with Woj and Sully and Lee and Richie and the rest of the guys, just trying to, figure out each and every day, how do we make the Packers better? And whether that's having a conversation with a player, a coach, guys in Adam and his staff in nutrition, Dr. Carr. I try to do my best to have kind of a broad-based overview of everything that's going on.
19th season in the NFL, 5th with the Packers. Milt, how'd you get your start?
I got my start because I wanted to teach and coach, and it was way back in the early 90s. I had a chance to go played football and baseball at a small college out in Iowa. And Luther College. I grew up, my start actually is from my dad in Blanchardville, Wisconsin, sitting at home, 9 o'clock church. We'd come home, Dad would take the phone off the hook, and we'd make a pile of food and sit down and watch the Packers as a family. I'm the oldest of 4 boys, so that's really where my start got my love for Green Bay. But in 1996, I'd graduated my undergrad degree, went to UWL, was going to do my student teaching in the La Crosse School District. Ran into a guy named Brian Gutekunst doing summer camps for Roger Herring. We kind of hit it off, and Brian's path took him to scouting in the NFL, and he always encouraged me to consider getting into scouting. And finally, after several years of coaching, an opportunity to intern here came up, and sitting here again today. It's pretty cool.
Milt, maybe you already answered it, but you were quite successful as a coach. DeSoto High School, state semifinalist in football a couple of years, won a state baseball championship, like with an undefeated record.
Right.
Then on to UW La Crosse, and then to Luther to coach. You had a coaching thing going. Why did you make the ultimate decision to go in personnel?
It was, I could have stayed at Luther really as the head coach in waiting and taken over that program in a couple of years, but it was a long conversation with my wife, Amy, who is ultimately the reason that I'm able to sit here. But she's like, if you don't chase this and take a shot at this, how are you ever going to be able to look at our kids and say, well, Dad, you had a chance, but you didn't do it? So she gave up her career path, allowed me to chase this, and ultimately it's been a pretty cool process.
Of your 19 NFL seasons, 14 were spent with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, Milt, from the outside looking in, I always think that the Ravens are a franchise that gets it. Mm-hmm. And if that is the case, what'd you take out of that decade plus there?
Ultimately, it's about the people. And you surround yourself with good human beings, people that want to work hard, they have empathy for each other, they care about each other, and you're willing to say, hey, let me help you, because if I'll help you get to be your best, we're going to be, ultimately we're going to be that much better. And the 14 years working for Ozzie Newsome, it's like getting a PhD in football. And he took a chance on me when he could have done a favor for maybe 100 different people. Saw something in me, gave me a shot, and that's the thing that I never wanted to let him down. And all the guys I worked with there, it was challenging now. You better be, mind your P's and Q's, but he taught me so much just about if you make it just about the wins and losses, you're gonna miss the big picture, and ultimately it's not always just about that.
Milt, could you talk about the other principles that guide you along the way, today and in the future, the things, the bedrocks of Milt Hendrickson's career?
I think for me, I'll go back to two words. It's trust and communication. And the relationships that you have with the people not only you work with, but the people you bring to the organization, you have to be able to trust each other, and you have to be able to trust each other unconditionally. And along with that, the communication that takes place where you and I can sit down and have a real conversation. You may tell me something that I don't necessarily want to hear, but I need to hear it, and vice versa. And you can walk away from that conversation saying, you know what, Rock was right. I've got to do this differently. And you bring enough people who ultimately don't like football, don't love football, they need it. It defines who they are, and it defines their whole career path. If you can bring, like I said before, enough people that have that type of empathy, and just make it about ball and make it about the Green Bay Packers, and then the wins become easy then.
Does it take what you do? Does it take a certain amount of courage?
Absolutely. You can't be afraid to fail. If you're afraid to fail, it's hard to succeed in anything. And failure is going to happen. You're going to lose football games. You're going to have injuries. But it's how do you handle that? Do you have you maintain your process and don't deviate from that with all the distractions? And that's one of the biggest things that I took away from Ozzie, was that he was so patient. And when the storm was whirling around, you always knew where Ozzie was. He was right there, and steering the ship, and that always gave you, comfort. And I think, to Brian's credit, a lot of the things that we've gone through in the time that I've been here in Green Bay, I see a lot of the exact same things that made Ozzie and still makes Ozzie who he is. Brian's got a lot of those same attributes.
Your coaching background, do you find that helpful in your current line of work?
I do. I think because, the personnel and the coaching side, we try to be as cohesive as possible. We often in personnel, it's not just about 2023. We're also looking at 25 and 27 and what's going to be maintaining what we have here in Green Bay. But I also understand their consternation with, hey, we need another corner, or we need another tight end. In the day-to-day, we got to win right now. So I have an appreciation for that, and I think that makes some of the conversations you have with our coaching staff a little bit easier.
You played football and baseball at Luther College.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, you captained both teams.
Yep.
Do you find that multi-dimensional athletic background, is that a positive in what you do today?
Absolutely. I think in our process, in our evaluation of players that we want to bring to Green Bay, guys that are specifically just football players, it gives me a little bit of pause, because a lot of times if they're good enough to be on our board, that means that they're also probably, maybe basketball or baseball or track wasn't their best sport. And before, learning how to fail, learning how to be a good teammate, maybe you're not the guy. And I just think from a physiological sense, the athlete, the different things you're doing in different sports, the more guys that have a broader picture that way, I think. Personally, I think those guys end up being better players.
When you look at a player, where do you start?
And just how big are they, first and foremost. We always talk about we want to be a big and fast beats small and slow. And in Green Bay in January, fast can get slow, but big doesn't get small. And so first of all, it's just sizing a guy up and taking a look at their body type, and then you see their athletic, and just see them move as an athlete. Can they bend? Can they change directions? And then you kind of get a sense for that, and then you transition into the conversations you have with people about the character, and then you start watching the tape, and then you see him again, and then you see him again, and then you watch more tape, and you have more conversations. So it's 24/7, 365 anymore.
Milt, what would you say is the most satisfying part of your job?
Oh, seeing the gate open, And being able to be a part of the Green Bay Packers, I think that in and of itself is so satisfying. But I have literally hundreds of people between family and extended family and friends from kindergarten to high school to college to my time at Baltimore that and just seeing how much it means to people, this place and the history of this place, and knowing that there's an opportunity to continue to pay it forward and the responsibility that comes with that, I think is pretty damn cool.
Milt, you guys in the personnel department, I watch you interact, see you on the road. It seems like that is a team within the team. How important is that?
It's vital to have for our process. I go back to the trust and communication. The guys in that room, we have to be able to have those real conversations, and the continuity that we've been able to develop young guys, and we've got a wide variety of experience in that room. But I think we all feed off of each other really, really well. And Brian does such a good job of allowing guys to fail, but also acknowledging when they're doing something that they're setting themselves up for success. Because Brian was in the Southeast for 13 years as an area scout. He understands that it's hard and understands you're going to get guys wrong. And that teamwork that we've been able to cultivate, it speaks volumes in terms of, I think, what we have been able to bring here and what we're going to continue to bring.
Now you're a regular practice, as all the guys are. Who or what do you watch?
I try to each day pick a different position group for the individual periods, and then step back. And to me, a lot of what I watch is the communication that's taking place between the players, between coaches and the players, and the stuff because we can come back in and watch the tape. It's that type of, and the body language, quite frankly, is this player having a bad day? Is there something that we need to figure out? Or this player's really made some strides. Let's, as you work your own board of our own roster, ultimately we always talk about you have to know your guys. You have to know your team inside and out, forwards and backwards, because if you don't really know our guys, how can you go say, okay, we need to bring this guy here, he makes us that much better? So it's a long-winded answer, but ultimately it's kind of the stuff you can't see when you go back and watch the tape.
Let's say you're named GM of an expansion NFL franchise.
Sure.
You are starting from square one. Milt, where do you start?
I'd start by thanking my wife, first and foremost.
Good idea,
Yeah.
Good idea.
But in terms of there'd have to be a head coach that we could have that trust and communication. That would be somebody that it's literally like a marriage, that you can build that out together. And then the framework of your organization, from nutrition to equipment to the training staff to the medical staff to the PR to the grounds crew, understanding that all those guys, it's the iceberg analogy. You see the players and the coaches, but 90% of that thing is underwater, and that's what keeps it afloat. But then from a player perspective, it's the quarterback position and then being able to affect the quarterback.
Milt, you dedicated your whole professional life to the game of football. What do you like about it? You got to like it. Maybe you love it.
It's my absolute best friends and people that I consider brothers, and my three brothers. The common bond we all have is football. And there's something about the sport that the tough days are the days I remember most, and the adversity that you have to face, and being able to sit next to that guy or be in a huddle next to the guy, know that he's got my back and I have his. The bond of this game is unlike anything else.
You're Wisconsinite, went to Pecatonica High
Yep.
School, class valedictorian.
Yep.
And I take it you're a crazy Packer fan.
Correct.
Okay. And I also saw where, this is pretty incredible. Now you've got a son named Hudson with a T.
Yes.
Hudson with a T.
With a T.
Is that coming from Don Hudson?
A true story. When I interned with the Packers in 2004, that training camp, my wife and I, it was our first year anniversary. We celebrated our first year anniversary over in the, well, I was in the dorms. I got a hotel for one night, but over at the Abbey, we went over there and had a beer. And the next day at practice, we were practicing at the Don Hudson Center, and she said, if we have that next night, she said, if we had a son someday, Hudson would be a pretty cool name. Fast forward 3 months, and we found out we have a baby on the way. So, and our firstborn was a son. So he's now 6'8", 225
Really?
pounds. Oh yeah, he's a big drink of water. So he's going to be going into a senior year already.
Milt, thanks for the time. Milt Hendrickson, one of the Packers' unsung heroes.